So today what we're going to do is we're going to sort of demonstrate, show you how we're helping organizations to unlock sort of storytellers from within and to enable these organizations to create video content at scale. So the obligatory hype reel, video company, we've got to start with a bit of video, so here we go. Everyone pumped? Yeah, I'm pumped, feeling good. I've seen that video so many times, I still love it. Who disagrees with this? Good, I'm pleased to hear that. It really has changed the way we communicate. The way we consume information online is evolved so massively. I mean, the stats sort of kind of explain this. 95% of a message retained in video versus only 10% in text. That's a staggering stat. I couldn't believe it the first time I saw that, but that's based on independent research. The only way I can really explain that is that we don't learn to read until we're sort of 5, 6 years old. And those first 5 years of our lives are so impressionable in terms of visuals that I think we're programmed to just retain more from visual information. Nowadays, business professionals are 75% more likely to watch a video than read text, another pretty staggering stat. And more from a social media perspective, you get 1,200% more shares of video content on social media than text and image content combined. So that shows a real sort of desire and appetite for visual video content. And then actually, this is a Cisco prediction that by 2021, 80% of all the information, anything you consume online will be web content. But this doesn't just translate from external internet-based platforms. This also translates for internal platforms, which hopefully is relevant for you guys. So, employee voice. So we went to a conference a couple of weeks ago, a conference called Belong. I don't know if any of you were there. It's run by a company called Peakon. They're actually one of our clients. They run an employee engagement sort of app and tool, and they created this sort of heartbeat survey. So their tool is a listening tool, so that organizations can kind of regularly communicate with their staff, and staff can continually feed back anonymously. So then you can kind of get a sense of the lay of the land and what's being talked about within the organization. And this survey was drawn from, I think, 11 million survey comments. So it's a really, really nice sort of data set, and some really interesting findings came from it. Firstly, probably an extremely worrying stat is that 2/3 of employees actually don't feel heard by their employer. How many of you actually regularly survey your employees? Like yearly, quarterly, monthly? Excellent. Anybody less than yearly? Okay. Yeah, I met a retailer a few days ago that survey their staff every 3 years, and I was kind of mind-boggled by that. I just didn't quite understand how you can sort of show that you value your employees if you're only doing it on every 3 years. These guys, they survey on a regular basis. It could be every other week. You're sending a couple of questions just to get a bit of sentiment analysis, and that's really, really important. What's really important is that you use the data that the feedback come to you, that the employees feedback to the employer to actually inform what actions you take, whether it's actually doing something or creating some form of communication that addresses that feedback. So it's important to use that data properly. This is a question they asked, very open question. If you had a magic wand, what's the one thing you would change about your organization? Anybody want to answer that for their own organization? Anybody? What's the one thing you would change about your organization? IT, okay. Anybody else? Coffee. Really? We've got good coffee in the office, Morgan. Well, you could hazard a guess. The number one answer was pay. Of course, everyone wants to be paid more. But significantly, the second most important thing was communication. People don't feel like communication is strong enough within organizations. Basically, we need to be communicating a lot more. I mean, research shows that really strong, effective communication can have a strong impact on engagement and strategic objectives because it really creates that sense of belonging and that ability to sort of, employees really want that sort of two-way dialogue as that sort of paves the way to a more transparent and innovative and hopefully more profitable environment. Employee needs and priorities evolve massively over tenure. So what was really interesting is, you get a lot of different answers depending on how long you've been within the organization. So obviously in the first 3 months, you're enthusiastic, you're ready to go. You're looking at onboarding, and you're looking at training sessions. These are sort of the key words that they were feeding back in terms of personal growth. And then as things go along, your priorities start to change. You're starting to find your feet sort of 6 months into the role. And it's really important that they start to find their voice within that organization and to be heard. And then, the most tricky segment is the people that are within the organization they're in that sort of 2 to 5 year period within the organization. Statistically, they're most likely to leave the organization after 4 years. And the reason for that is they're looking for much more personal growth. That's really when it's super important to actually start to address their needs. They want to become leaders within the organization. They want to look for a promotion. And it's really important that one addresses that and is aware of that. And I think flexible personalized learning is now massively becoming the norm. People want to consume information as and when they want it. There's a lot more workplace mobility. 40% of staff are working from home quite regularly now. And it really requires L&D leaders to sort of deliver much more sort of personalized learning based on the requirements of those employees. So let's talk about stories. I'm no sort of neuroscientist, but I did a bit of research on Google, and I learned a few things about the brain. Did you know that if you communicated sort of facts, figures, and information alone, you're only really triggering 2 parts of the brain? However, if you start to wrap a story around those facts, figures, and information, that's when you start to awaken all the other 7 parts of the brain, dealing with touch, sounds, movements. And what that does, it gives you a 350% increased chance of making sure that your message is memorable. 350% increased chance. It's staggering. Because as humans, we're hardwired to remember and learn from the emotional impact of stories. So getting really good at storytelling is really, really important. So you have to think about, if you tap into those senses, you create a memorable message, and create that sort of emotional connection, think about the impact that could potentially have within your organization in terms of engagement and hopefully talent retention. Because you can really kind of create change, you create purpose, and this hopefully will lead to greater ROI for your business. Further to that, we are the only species on this planet that can actually tell stories. Stories sort of allow you to say things like, did you know, or I can imagine a future where. So stories can bring people together and businesses and to find commonality and really achieve sort of transformational things. Of course, it creates a sense of purpose. You know, I think next year nearly half of all employees in organizations will be either millennial or Gen Z. And sort of in order to attract and retain them, you really need to engage them in a purpose. You know, Gen Z, their priorities are, you know, they want fun, they want social interaction, they want an employer who supports sort of mental health and well-being, has initiatives related to, you know, being environmentally friendly. It's really, really important to sort of have that purpose and to create stories around those sort of initiatives. And then finally, the future of work is now. Do you guys know what the Business Roundtable is? I think we talked about this, Corin, last night. It's basically, it's a club. It's like a membership organization of the top 200 CEOs in the United States. And they kind of come together on a regular basis. This is since the early 70s. And their statement of purpose changed last month for the first time, I think, since the beginning. Their original statement of purpose was, we need to serve the interest of our shareholders. We've heard that one before within our organizations. The purpose is now changed to serve all stakeholders. So that's significant because they're looking at customers, they're looking at suppliers, they're looking at the wider community, but the fourth and very important segment is they're looking after the employees to a much greater extent. Now, that's obviously a statement of purpose. We'll have to see what sort of actions they take in the coming time, but I think if we can have the top 200 corporate CEOs in the US sort of adjust their purpose quite significantly, I think that's a good sign. And I think we all need to adapt to the changing landscape. So how do you find your story? So as a business, Shootsta, we enable our clients to create video content at scale. But we actually equip you with the camera kit and all the training and resources you need to actually shoot your very own content. So, for example, company Qantas, one of our foundation clients in Australia, we've trained over 160 of their staff across about 12 different business units, and they're shooting anywhere between 60, 70 videos per month, which is great. We do also have a network of videographers that can shoot content for you. Once that content is shot, it's uploaded to a cloud-based platform called The Hub, and that's where all your previously shot content lives, your elements, library, your brand assets. It's like a digital asset management tool for video. And that's where you put in your brief to our in-house editors, and they get cracking on the top and tail, the motion graphics, color correction, and music. And they get your professionally edited video back to you within 24 or 48 hours, depending on the subscription package that you're on. So we are essentially enabling companies to tell their own stories. We are all about democratizing the content production process, which is super empowering for employees. But the question is, how do you find these people? How do you find your story within your business? First and foremost, identify the passion. Like, find the right passionate people within the business. Identify what makes them tick. Think about, these people that have the drive to tell great stories are usually the ones that are the most willing or keen to sort of be upskilled and to learn more about the video process. Prioritize the authenticity. People are really done with sort of super slick content. Obviously, there's a time and a place for really good content, like TVC content, maybe the first video you see on your corporate homepage. But generally speaking, it's not necessary anymore to create every single piece of video content. It has to be superly high produced. So what people really want is real content, real stories that they can relate to. Understand your audience. So, who's going to be watching that content? Are you going to be serving content specifically to people that have joined the business in the first 3 months? Are you going to be serving that content to maybe people that have been with the business for 5+ years? They will want different messages. Obviously, they'll also want different messages depending on the department that they're in as well. So you want to create a story that's tailored to their needs and wants. Like I was saying with the employee voice tool, more and more of the data that people are capturing from their surveys, to the sort of employee engagement apps. That is what's really informing the type of content that our clients are starting to use. So really data-driven strategies is really important. Structure your key messages. Obviously, a really good story has an arc. You want to be able to sort of tell a good story in a short space of time. We've seen a lot of videos that are quite lengthy, but if with a good storyboard, with a good understanding of how to tell a story, you can really condense that into a much shorter video that has a lot more impact. And then finally, you want to be creating that powerful ending. You have to think about, what do you want the audience to do after they watch that powerful piece of content? So think about your calls to action, because every piece of content should have a purpose behind it. Finally, before we go on to some really fun examples, this is information that our clients have been able to inform us on over the years. So we're a business that's grown very quickly from our founding days in Sydney, Australia, to Singapore, Hong Kong, London, and the US, all within 4 years. We're not investor backed. So we've had to be customer obsessed. We have to really understand their requirements. We do a lot of brains trust meetings, sort of getting them to feed into us and what they want from our product, because it's a constant iterative process. These were the kind of core things that they fed back to us as to the reasons why they are kind of generally using us. So I think first and foremost, particularly from HR and L&D, the empowerment piece is absolutely a hugest part. Having that ability to give people the tools to actually create their own content is very powerful. It really connects global teams with disparate sort of employee bases across lots of different countries. Extremely difficult to be communicating with your audiences in a relatable way, and it's really important to sort of, with that authentic content, to get those teams connected. There's a level of consistency as well. So if you're in a global business, video content and stories are told in a certain way. Maybe there's greater investment in video in, say in Hong Kong versus in New York. That creates a lot of inconsistencies with your content. You really want to be sort of developing that and creating that sort of continuity so that you can actually push out that sort of always-on messaging to your audiences. Obviously, the quick responsive content, so you can be creating content that is required to be pushed out and that's relevant to people at the time of actually creating that content. And then finally, I think it's really, as you grow in terms of scale, you can really develop amazing sort of cost efficiencies. The reason why our founder actually created this business and this model was he was running a traditional agency for about 15 years, and his clients were saying, we just need something a bit more agile, something that's a bit quicker, but also, very importantly, we need it to be a lot more cost effective. So this is what we are creating.